This is every single fight to make after UFC Fight Night Vegas 77, Holm versus Bueno Silva. I have all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now. Some winners, some losers, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal those opponents one by one as this video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with the co-main event. Let's be real. Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Mayra Bueno Silva gets a choke in the second round. Very nasty stuff. Taps out Holm. She's now going to be a top contender. We've got a problem right now in the women's bantamweight division because I saw a post, I believe it was by ESPN, which was saying, like, who do you think should fight for the belt? And I was looking at the rankings and thinking to myself, oh my God, any matchup they can make right now between any two of these women's bantamweight fighters is absolute pay-per-view poison. So, a lot of people are suggesting Pena versus Pennington. I don't want to see that whatsoever at all. I think Pena should fight Ronda Rousey for the vacant belt. If we are hearing rumors that Ronda Rousey might want to return, I say UFC, fork out the money, give it to Ronda Rousey and give her a title fight against Juliana Pena, because Pena is going to sell that fight. That leaves Mayra Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington. This is the matchup to make. They both need another fight. And even if they win the next one, it's still pay-per-view poison to give them a title fight. But I feel like Mayra Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington is a good in the meantime matchup. Maybe you can even put it on the same card as the potential title fight between Pena and Rousey, just so they have a backup opponent on hand, and also so they can shine some spotlight on the future contender as well as the title fight that's taken place. So I think Mayra Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington would be good on the Brazil card in November. Maybe if Raquel Pennington, I don't think anything Pennington does is going to win over the US fan base. But Mayra Bueno Silva could win over the Brazilian fan base if you do a fight in Brazil in November. So, Rousey versus Pena, Mayra Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington. Holm, on the other hand, if she is going to continue fighting, and I haven't heard that she is retiring yet, if she's going to continue fighting, we need to give her a fight where it's not a nice matchup. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, here's a rematch against Aldana because both of you are coming off a loss. No. I don't care if Holm's coming off a loss. She needs to take on an up-and-comer in the women's bantamweight division. We need some movement within the division. And the only fighter I can think of is Karol Rosa. She's coming off a win. She's ranked pretty highly. I believe she's in the top 10, maybe number 8 or 9 in the rankings. And Holm needs to sacrifice her ranking spot to an up-and-comer. Otherwise, it's pretty much wasted because you don't want to give Holm a nice matchup and then she retires anyway. If there is a retirement on the line potentially, you'd much rather the result be if the other fighter wins over Holm, that you have a fresh contender jumping up the rankings instead of Holm winning against some other loser in the bantamweight division and then retiring, or some loser beating Holm, and then it's just like, what are we doing here? She's already lost to all these top guys. So women, all these top women, although there is a bit of a shift going on. Holm versus Karol Rosa. Let's move on from that minefield. Jack Della Maddalena. I rewatched a fight with Hafez. Other than the guillotines, it actually wasn't a terrible performance, okay? That's all I'm going to say about that performance. Although it was bad and we were expecting a first round KO or a second round finish, for a guy who was constantly trying to take him down, JDM actually had like above 80% takedown defense and mainly ended up on bottom whenever he pulled a guillotine on bottom. So take away the guillotines, he clearly wins that fight based on rounds 2 and 3, and even arguably did more damage in round 1, but whatever, it wasn't enough to change the slight edge in grappling, or the major edge in grappling, to Basil Hafez. So JDM, he kind of got shown a little bit of exposure in his game. The grappling IQ might not all the way be there. So I think that JDM versus Sean Brady needs to be rebooked. I didn't really care for this matchup in the first place. I was like, why not JDM versus another striker in the rankings of the welterweight division? I was like, we know he has good takedown defense. We've seen him scramble against some grapplers. But after watching Hafez take him down quite a few times and watching him pull those guillotines and put himself on bottom, and watching him nearly get arm triangled at one point as well, it wasn't even close, but a guy like Sean Brady finishes that arm triangle. He's a weirdly strong guy, and if Hafez can get you there, Brady can finish you from there. So, JDM versus Sean Brady is a must-see fight, in my opinion, if we're ever going to believe that JDM can be a real top contender again. Now, I'm not saying he can't still be a top contender if he doesn't fight Sean Brady. He could. We've seen fighters have really close fights. Like Jeff Neal lost to Neil Magny. He lost, clearly, to Neil Magny. Anything can happen in the UFC. So I'm not saying his hype's all the way diminished like other people are. But for the hype to be back on the level that it was, we need to see him versus Brady in September in Australia. You can put that on the main card of the pay-per-view, and that'll be a huge rebuilding of hype if he does beat Brady. And if Brady wins, he's going to be right back on track as well. So I think Brady is dangerous, but I do want to say Brady's entries for takedowns are a lot more obvious than Hafez. Hafez had really good timing on his takedowns. Brady's a way out in the open, so I still think JDM could win. Still a risky matchup, though. But if there's anything that I think Brady might have been hesitant to take this matchup in the first place, but now I think he's going to be eager to take this matchup. So I say rebook it for September. We move on to Basil Hafez. Kind of the MVP of the card. I mean, he wasn't expected to be competitive with JDM whatsoever, but he looked all right, and he looked good, and he showed off some skills. Not so much on the feet, but at times on the feet, but the grappling was good, and a lot of people are giving him high praise. So I say, give him some time off first of all. That's all I'm going to say to start things off. He took a lot of damage in that third round, and I don't want this to be a situation where everyone's praising Bueno Silva for surviving Alex Pereira in the third round based on, like, after all the damage he took, and then he rushes back in there and gets chinned by GM3. You know what I mean? Like, we need to take his time. Don't build into the hype and just get him right back in there. Have Basil Hafez take some time off. He's clearly UFC welterweight level. I don't think he should be chucked into the deep end. I don't think he should be chucked into the shallow end. I think he should be chucked in to the middle of the pool. And that's against Muslim Sadykhov, coming off a loss to Nicholas Dalby not that long ago. He's also pretty old, so he's not going to be too active anyway. So I say, do this fight in December, at earliest, maybe early December on a fight night card. Headliner of the prelims, Basil Hafez versus Muslim Sadykhov is a decent test for Hafez to see if he really is a real deal of the welterweight division. And Muslim Sadykhov, he's old, he's coming off a loss. What right does he have to say no to this right now? You know what I mean? He's just going to take anything they offer him. So let's do that matchup. I think that's a good one. We move on. Francisco Prado got a big win over Ottoman Azaitar. A lot of people say early stoppage. I say early stoppage, but it was going to get finished anyway by the looks of things, so I'm not going to harp on it too much about the stoppage. He got a win by TKO. He took some big shots, but he's going to be ready to get back in there pretty soon. Someone else who's on a similar schedule to him is Nazim Sadykhov, and he said he wants to fight at MSG on the prelims. He didn't say the prelims, but let's be real, it's the prelims. Nazim Sadykhov wants to fight in MSG. Prado wants to be active as well. Let's match them up against each other. They both just fought on the same card. People are going to know their names associated with each other because a lot of people just watched them on the same card, pretty close to each other on the card as well. So both people that know one of them will know the other because they both fought on the same card, if you know what I'm saying. So book them against each other in MSG in November on the early prelims. I think that's a great matchup to make. They're both coming off wins in lightweight and at the very same time, and are both looking for a quick turnaround. So put them together at MSG. On the other hand, Terrence McKinney. This is one that people would be waiting for. Who am I going to match up with Terrence McKinney? I already mentioned this on my stream, so some of you already know I'm thinking Trevor Peek versus Terrence McKinney on the December pay-per-view early prelim opener, or maybe the November pay-per-view early prelim opener. Start off the pay-per-view card with Terrence McKinney versus Trevor Peek. Someone's going to sleep. And I think this is actually a really good matchup for Terrence McKinney. Trevor Peek swings, overly exaggerates his shots as well, really telegraphs everything. I mean, it's a wonder he got to the UFC. But I love Trevor Peek. His style is absolutely amazing to watch. Same with Terrence McKinney, but he needs a confidence boost. And I think a matchup like Trevor Peek is going to be one where he's like, okay, I'm not worried about takedowns. I'm not worried about this guy outskilling me on the feet. I'm not worried about this guy countering me on the feet. He's going to come straight at me, and that's what I do best against. So I think Terrence McKinney should do good against Trevor Peek, and I think this is a matchup he should be calling for. So Terrence, I know I roast you a bunch, and we were laughing at you for losing, but get off Twitter, first of all, okay? And then call out Trevor Peek for November or December. That is a matchup that's going to get your confidence back, that's going to get you probably a win. I'd pick him to win that one, although Trevor Peek is dangerous. I actually think he could choke out Trevor Peek because Trevor Peek has Derek Lewis takedown defense where he's so naturally freakishly strong and like genetically gifted in strength that he can just get back up from takedowns. McKinney's pretty good at getting the back. So if he just gets back up against McKinney, he's going to give up his back. So I think it's a great matchup for McKinney. Both fight fans know both of them as like memes of the division at this point. Even though McKinney was at one point a prospect, he's now a bit of a known meme of the division. So I think Terrence McKinney versus Trevor Peek, perfect fight to open up a pay-per-view card, kick off a card with an amazing scrap between the two of them. That way you keep one of them and lose one of them. But Trevor Peek might get another chance if he does lose this one to McKinney. But if McKinney loses, I think it's time to cut him. But this way you guarantee that one of them's coming off a win moving forward, rather than putting them against individual other fighters and having them both lose. That wouldn't be good. So keep one of them guaranteed. Terrence McKinney versus Trevor Peek. We move on. Norma Jamont. Who should she be up against next? I was going to put a picture of my lap in this picture box here. But I thought it was a little bit distasteful. Okay. But we're going to go, oh my God, sorry. I should have given a jump scare warning. But Josiane Nunes, the only women's featherweight right now that she hasn't fought. She's fought the rest of them. I was going to say maybe rematch her and Chasson, but that just happened like a year ago. So maybe save that for a rainy day if there's literally no other matchups to make. I'm a big fan of cutting the women's featherweight division, but Jamont's just got too much cake to make bantamweight. So let's do Norma Jamont versus Josiane Nunes. Josiane Nunes is a dangerous knockout puncher. Norma Jamont has been hit on the chin a few times in her career and has been KO'd by Megan Anderson before in her career as well. So it's a winnable fight for Josiane Nunes. I would pick Norma Jamont to win, but I like the matchup, and it's basically the only matchup you can actually make at women's featherweight. So do it in Brazil in November. They're both Brazilian. We'll see who wins. Who cares, right? We move on. Park Yun-Yong, or Yun-Yong Park, got a big win in his fight against Albert Duraev. If Albert Duraev won, I was going to put him against Bo Nickel. But Park Yun-Yong won. I don't think there's the same excitement for a Bo Nickel matchup anymore. You know what I mean? And I also know he took some damage, so I don't think he's going to be on a similar schedule to Bo Nickel, who might be looking to return in November in MSG. So I'm thinking end of the year, Yun-Yong Park should be looking to actually get a ranked opponent. So maybe November, actually. Maybe he could fight Bo Nickel, but I just like the idea of a Dagestani or Chechnyan versus Bo Nickel. The visual of that in the build-up would have actually been a really big deal. So maybe try and find Ikram Aliskerov for Bo Nickel and just put that on the main card of a pay-per-view. That would be amazing. Or maybe put it in like the co-main event of a fight night. That would also be good. But I'm thinking Yun-Yong Park versus Andre Muniz in November in Brazil. Got to stack that Brazil card with a bunch of Brazilians. Andre Muniz is Brazilian, so let's do Andre Muniz versus Yun-Yong Park. It's pretty straightforward. Andre Muniz just pulled out of a fight, I believe, recently that he was supposed to be having. So he also lost to Brendan Allen recently as well. I was going to match up Park Yun-Yong with Chris Curtis. I thought that made sense, but Chris Curtis is fighting Anthony Hernandez, I believe. So let's do Yun-Yong Park versus Andre Muniz. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He deserves a ranked opponent, and Andre Muniz doesn't deserve a layup. So let's give him Park Yun-Yong and see how he does. I think it's a great matchup. Makes all the sense in the world. Make it happen in November in Brazil. We move on. Melsik Bagdasaryan got a win. Another fighter who got a win in the same weight class on that very same card is... what was his name? Malik Costa. And they both have a very fun style. So style-wise, also do this in November in Brazil for Malik Costa. I think that would be good scheduling-wise for both of them. They both want to stay active as well. Neither took too much damage unless they like hurt their foot kicking their opponent or something. So I think Melsik Bagdasaryan versus Malik Costa not only is a matchup that makes sense schedule-wise and both of them coming off wins-wise and same division-wise, of course, but it's also a matchup that's just a great stylistic matchup for the pair of them. They're going to have a great striking match. So I think that's going to be a wonderful one. Melsik Bagdasaryan, Malik Costa, make it happen. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip, I'll see you later. That's every fight to make after UFC Vegas 77. Honorable mention, we need to do Ronda Rousey versus Juliana Pena. Although it's not ideal, it's still a big matchup, and Juliana Pena will trash talk the hell out of Rousey. You know that's going to happen. Toodle Pip, see you later. Goodbye.